Mad, Bad and Dangerous, a celebration of difficult women. This is a series of interviews between influential women over 70 years of age. My name is Emma O'Grady. I'm an artist and I make work inspired by true events, real lives and shared histories. I believe that by sharing experiences we can change our world in profound, tiny ways. I embarked on this journey to pay tribute to these extraordinary women, to create a space for them to speak publicly with their peers and ultimately learn from them how to become more difficult.
Until the battle of the sexes has finally become unknown. Until nature has stopped being treated as the enemy of man.
Lelia Doolan was born in 1934. She is a film and theatre director, producer, actor, journalist and activist. Lelia's former RTE colleague Bob Quinn says that Lelia does not enter company, she descends on it. She infamously barged into a Hollywood boardroom armed with bacon, sausages and a bottle of whiskey and put them on the table demanding funds for her first feature film, Reefer and the Model. And they gave it to her. Lelia began working at RTE in the 1960s and later resigned over their commercial policies. In 1971, she became the first female artistic director of the Abbey Theatre since Lady Gregory. Most recently, she was involved in the reopening of Yeats's Tower, Tour Ballylee, and spearheaded the building of Galway's art house cinema, the Picture Palace.
And the IFTA goes to Bernadette. Now it's an political journey.
And the message is simple. Keep singing, keep cherishing, feisty, rebellious, awkward, difficult people. That's what we're about. Cherish uncertainty, cherish failure, cherish poverty, cherish ourselves. Thank you. Now you've gone way off. And if you start reading me bits, this will not be a conversation. But I know you won't. I know you won't.
I will.
No, you won't.
I will.
Margaretta D'Arcy was born in 1934. She is a highly creative and experimental theatre practitioner, and her dedication to using theatre for radical change is strongly complemented by her filmmaking, pirate radio production and activism. Margaretta and her husband, playwright John Arden, embarked on a productive collaboration from the 1960s onwards, using dramas to extend the boundaries of national identity and human freedom. They co-authored culturally, socially and politically radical shows like the 6-part non-stop Connolly Show and the BBC radio series Whose is the Kingdom. They were ousted from the British Theatre in 1972, when they were the first to strike at London's Aldwych Theatre over the Royal Shakespeare Company's production of The Island of the Mighty. In 1961, Margaretta joined the Anti-Nuclear Committee of 100, led by Bertrand Russell. She supported the women in Armagh Jail and spent 3 months in prison there during the Dirty Protest. She once said, "The best thing that ever happened to her was being put into Armagh Jail because it changed her whole perspective. She understood the oppression of women." Margaretta's book about Armagh, Tell Them Everything, was an alternative bestseller. She was at Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp, on and off, for 19 years, and with bolt cutters and legal challenges outwitted the British and US military between 1982 and the year 2000. Margaretta and John were constantly moving between the UK and Ireland, on the run from one establishment or another, but wherever they could, they did theatre. In the 1960s, they were making films in Uachtarard supporting the Land League, supporting travellers' rights, as well as putting on experimental events, plays and happenings in Dublin. They also founded Currandulla Arts and Entertainment Society. She is a member of Women in Media and Entertainment, which has consultant status at the UN. In the early 1990s, she started up annual seasons of Radio Pirate Woman. She has served time in 5 jails, twice for participating in demonstrations against the use of Shannon Airport as a stopover for US military flights. The archives of Margaretta D'Arcy and John Arden's life's work are housed in NUI Galway. Her latest venture has involved linking up with the Raging Grannies movement in Canada and the USA. Today, in her house in Galway, she sits down to be interviewed by Lelia Doolan, who is just 1 month older than her, but it's a running joke between them that Lelia behaves like her older sister.
I am such a goody-goody that I will not say anything unless it's factual and written down in print.
Mad, bad and dangerous. Mad, bad and dangerous.
Now, I gave you that very nice little teapot, didn't I?
You did.
The blue one,
You did.
which belonged to Finola Kiddo.
I think it fell and broke. You'll have
What?
to give me another one. You'll have to give me another one.
It didn't break. Are you saying you broke?
You never, yes. No, you never gave me. No, you gave me a brown one. I think you had a whole rake of them and you said, which one do you want? And I said, I'll take a brown one.
Oh, so you didn't have the blue one?
No, but there's the blue one up there. Perhaps I'll take it with
No,
me.
but that's a very sweet little one, isn't
I
it?
think it is, yes. A teapot. There's nothing as good as a teapot, really, is there? Jesus. Life is only. Life isn't. Right. What are you doing a clapper for? We're not doing this again, Catherine.
I've never used one before. Let me use it for the crack.
She wants to use it, clapping it.
Happy
Take
clapping.
one, and then take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Come on
8,
now.
9, 10.
Margaretta will need a cigarette.
Do you
if
want
don't
to
get
do
on.
one for each camera, so just one
No.
in front of
Jesus, woman,
each
down.
face?
Now, Lelia,
Should we all just say like Margaretta? In front of
meditation.
Margaretta.
I am a flower.
Just roll it
I
out.
I am a
a
daisy.
flower.
I am a daisy.
Happy?
1 second there.
But Lelia,
Who cuts
Yeah.
your hair?
Margaretta?
Everybody does, yes.
Okay.
To you.
But Pearl, you know Pearl of Wisdom,
I do.
she gave me a wonderful mantra,
Which is.
which is, and you
Yeah.
bring your breath in, I
Yeah.
am a flower.
I.
And it's beautiful. I am a flower. Because
Can you
the
turn
word
off
is
your
so good,
phone?
because You have to smile.
Christ.
I
Where's the phone
am
going?
a
Whose
flower.
phone is that
And
now?
you automatically smile.
Whose phone is going?
Mine.
So we'll have that in, Emma. I'm going to start off with I am a flower.
I'll
I
call her
am.
later on. Look, is that okay?
With that on silent.
Put it
right?
away.
Is it on silent, is it?
No, it's not. It's only turned
I
on.
am a flower.
I am
A flower. Flower.
a flower.
Yes, a flower.
Yes. Can we start with your family? Are you ready? Are we rolling? Are we rolling? Darlings.
No, they're not rolling yet.
If this goes off, I'll just stop it. Yeah. All right.
Answer it
I
yourself.
am a flower. So, Lelia,
Excuse me.
yes?
Keep your voice down now for a minute and stop taking that bit of paper up because you're not going to read it. Give it
I
to me.
am. I'm not going to give it to you because I've got very valuable words in it,
Whose
Which is-
words are they?
which is going to transform us.
I consider you started now, so.
Okay,
that's
Margaret, listen, leave down that paper for the moment and let's start and let's do a bit for the people out there, not just for the two of us, okay?
I've no interest in the people. I'm interested in you, Lelia.
Me too, me too. That is to say, I'm not interested in me.
I'm
I
interested
am
in you,
interested
Lelia.
in-
I don't give a bugger about the people.
That's all right then.
Because if they want to find out about me, they can look me up in Google.
There's not a lot in Google, actually. The last thing I read
There's a
in
lot
Google,
in Google.
Well, stop. There's some in Google, but in actual fact,
I know, there's a
of
lot.
what they mostly miss your
Well, they can
mad-
read my bloody books. They can watch my films. They can
Yes.
put on my plays.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about? Are you going to interrupt the whole time or are you going to shut up for a minute?
Well, I've got something very important to say to you.
Well, yeah, okay, well, stay away.
Are we on?
Yes, we've been on since the last
Okay,
10 minutes.
so
Yes.
me reading the Irish Times yesterday, I came across a very interesting review of a book. And it is going to change our whole concept about this whole business which is what people think that we're mad, bad, or what's the other thing we're meant to be?
Dangerous.
What?
Which of course we're not.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it absolutely epitomizes what I am, and that is that I'm weird.
Oh, weird.
Weird.
How did you get that from the paper? Is it in the paper? Did it say so?
Yes, it's all about a professor who's written a book about now. The thing is, Lelia, we have to find out if you're weird as well.
Oh God, yes.
So
All
the
right.
little test is, complete the following sentence in 10 different ways I am. If you answered with words such as curious, good-looking, a lawyer, or a marathon runner, then you're almost certainly weird. But if your first thoughts were instead along the lines of Una's sister, or part of the 5th generation of vultures from Tumavara, then you're more in tune with the majority of the world's population,
Imagine.
according to psychologists.
Thank you.
Now,
Yes.
as we go on, he doesn't say it, but actually, what he is implying is that us weirdies is that we follow the Communist Manifesto.
Now,
Well, if you identify people with "this is my sister" from somebody or other, then you are what is known as a bourgeois socialist.
oh, go away.
Yes.
That's nice to know.
Absolutely. And the whole business of part of the bourgeois is desirous of redressing social grievances in order to secure the continued existence of bourgeois society.
Well, I'm not interested in that. But what I'm interested in, as far as Marx is concerned, is the withering away of the state, and it hasn't really happened yet, has it? No. Margaretta, here you are,
Yes, I am.
alive and well,
And weird.
trying to be. There's no
And
difficulty
weird.
being weird. Yes, all right, fair enough.
So it's weird ones is that we changed the world.
Is that it?
Yes.
Where-
That's his analysis.
Well, I mean, a marathon runner is going to change the world. Is that what you're saying?
No, if somebody comes in, Dean, are you a marathon runner? Dean?
Dean is our
No.
sound man.
Now, instead of me saying to Dean, where do you live, Dean?
Who is your sister, do you mean?
That would then make me part of the non-weirdies.
That's true. Are you going to talk about anything other than weird, though? If you are, let me ask you a question or two, and then we could go on to another bit of the story. I wanted to ask you about your family.
No,
Because,
ab-
no, hold on. Just
no,
hold on a moment.
Now I'm
Stop.
weird. I don't have anything to do with that.
You
Those
have
kind
to
of
say.
questions. No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
No, I
because
do not.
Your
I
family
do
was
not,
weird
because
as well.
if I answer that question, then
I'm
then I am part of the majority of people who keep the status quo. We don't define ourselves by who your family is or
No, not at all.
where you come from or all that kind of
The
stuff.
notion of it being a definition is
No, the
bollocks.
definition
I
is
agree.
definition
Yeah,
is
but
of ideas.
No, it's not just ideas. Where do you think ideas come from? They don't come from the air. They come from the people that you know, don't they?
No.
No. Where do they come from, as far as you're
Well,
concerned?
I wouldn't have known anything about being a weird if I hadn't read the paper.
Well, okay. I think one would have known that you were weird if one had read many of your books. One would have been well aware from reading Loose Theatre, which is a guerrilla's idea of changing the world via theatre. And that would have been a way of finding out about you. It wasn't necessarily that you were weird to begin with. You weren't born weird.
I
Most
was.
people aren't born
Yes,
weird.
I'm sorry, I was born weird
Okay, let's see. Tell me how.
because I had pyloric stenosis and rejected food.
And did that make you weird?
Absolutely.
In what sense then did you
It
reject
means
the
that
weirdness?
Mother Nature,
She decided that you were an oddball.
she
from the
decided
beginning.
that she was not going to allow me to eat.
And what began you eating then?
Well, a surgeon
Mm-hmm.
called Brown, he operated on me.
Yeah. And did that change everything?
Well, it did, but still, we've got to understand that there is a dichotomy in my whole existence.
Of course. There's a
Yes.
dichotomy in everybody's existence.
I know, but in particular mine, because if Mother
No.
Nature comes along and says you're not to eat,
Well, all right. What did the surgeon do? What was the ailment that made you weird?
There was a blockage
In?
in my, as I was going into the stomach.
Okay. And that was removed.
And then one of my sons had the same thing.
I remember. That was your first son.
No, not my first son.
Your first son had hydrocephalus.
Yes, he died.
Yes, I know.
No.
But Neus.
No, I can't remember which one.
It was Neus. N-E-U-S-S, that son.
Noise.
Noise.
Was he the one then who had it?
Yes.
And then one of his children had it.
Oh, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Neus. It was Andrew. Your son Andrew had
I don't
it.
have a son called Andrew.
You did? Well, there's an Andrew who turns up in the book.
No.
Adam. Sorry, I've got it now. Adam. Your son Adam was the one who had that ailment.
Okay.
And you feared for him. However, he got out of it, which was amazing. And
Once again with surgeon,
yeah,
with the knife.
that's it. I remember being at a reading that Jennifer Johnston gave once in Kinvara, in Johnson's.
Yes.
And you said that you had a lot to do and say about the Holocaust because your mother was Jewish. And you, as a child, visited your grandparents in London. What were they like? Do you remember them?
I do, but I think you see, now you see once again, you might say, my weirdness, because we've got to understand is that De Valera was actually making a pact with the Nazis that he would give up the Jews in Ireland.
There was certainly a very murky area of decision making. I don't know if he was going to give them up, but he certainly was not going to.
Well, shall we say he would allow to come along and look at them?
We can go along with a series of non sequiturs, but really, I would like to know what you'd like to talk about.
Well, I want to talk about this whole idea of bourgeois socialism.
Go ahead.
And so the whole idea, which is tied up with the idea that you are defined by your family and by your location about where you live. So that once then you can make your connections.
Does bourgeoisie define you by where you live? Is that what you're saying? That bourgeois non-socialism defines you?
What this professor is saying is that the reason why we really don't change anything is because we are trapped within the identification caught up with family and location. Because it's very interesting actually what he says. So he says that the weirdos, which is me, is that we are motivated by guilt, while the bourgeois socialists are motivated by shame. Now, I'm sure that you remember when you were young, don't shame yourself. It's all about fear of what the neighbours are thinking about you. The constraints that are put on you is all the time is you have to think. So what's your mother going to think? What's your aunt going to think? What's the neighbour going to think? It's all about shame.
Why is it about shame? I mean, that's got to do with bourgeoisie, of course. It's got to do with what the neighbours will say. It's got to do with the valley of the squinting windows.
I know, but this holds the whole thing together. And
that's a view. That is a view of a man, which you have now decided is going to be your view. But I'd like to know about you.
No.
Yes.
Because what he has said is something extremely interesting.
Yes, of course it's interesting. Yes.
But my whole life has been on taking views, of reading about other people, and then I think about it and I think that's a very interesting way of looking at things, which I haven't looked at before.
I agree, and I like your sense of humour, which is always an ebullience in the situation. I remember in the court in Ennis, actually, that you kept the judge alive and you kept the court alive by telling him that he couldn't proceed with the case against you because they hadn't spelt your name correctly.
Oh, I know.
You remember that?
I know, right, yes.
One of the things that interests me also is it necessary to show one's weirdness by dressing in tune in a theatrical way, because one of the characteristics of many of your actions has been that you dress for the action as an actor would for the stage. So is the stage one of the elements that creates the actions that you do?
No.
Tell me then.
Can I just say, which maybe you read in the book, at the age of 4, I discovered the pleasures of masturbation.
I do remember in the book you did, and they weren't approved of.
And I decided that I then was going to tell everyone, this is something absolutely wonderful to do.
Yes, spread
So I
around.
go to school and I put my new concept of pleasure into practice. And to my...
As a performance.
Well, I suppose so.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I know something and I want to share it with the world.
Yes, exactly.
And so I thought, this is a very nice thing to do when you're slightly bored in school. Now, what was very interesting was the reaction of the teacher. So she didn't say anything to me, but she just left. I think we all were having to line up and wait till our names were called and then go somewhere or other. So she left me all alone masturbating there on my little thing. She didn't say anything. And later on that evening, she came to visit my mother. Now, nothing was ever said. And that taught me a lesson.
What lesson?
The way things are hidden. So she couldn't...
Okay,
so
and your mother
she didn't have the courage to come along and say, stop doing that.
That's amazing. It really is.
She was absolutely mortified by this whole experience. So she sneaked along to my mother.
And did your mother say anything to you?
Nope, nobody ever said anything.
Your mother was...
But I realised then that it was something I should not do.
Your mother was a doctor. And
Well,
your
she
mother,
wasn't a doctor then.
No, but she was studying, or she wanted to study, and she later became a doctor. And I remember in the book that you say that you all went off to Carrow, and this perhaps has to do with bourgeois shame, and you were all prancing around without a stitch on, and your mother was playing, and she was breastfeeding the youngest of your sisters, and it was made very clear by the people there that they didn't much approve of that.
They didn't want her playing tennis with all the young men.
Yes. Well, they were only playing tennis in the street, I think you said.
In the street, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And why would they have been disapproving, do you think? What
Because
was there
she
in...
was a young woman whose husband was not there.
He came and left you there, though. He drove you.
Oh, he
to
drove us
Carrow.
there, yes, so you
And
had
they
the
could see-
respectable thing, I
and a-
know. But he didn't stay.
No, but the lady of the house, who was your landlady, so to speak,
Yes.
she liked him and she talked to him.
Oh, she liked him.
But she hadn't any time for your mother. Was it because your mother looked different? Was she lissom? Apart from playing with the
Absolutely.
fellas?
I mean, you know.
Yeah, she was
She
nubile.
was. She didn't wear all the clothes that women in those days used to wear. Do you remember what women used to wear in those days?
You
The
tell me.
corsets.
Of course, I forgot. Yes, that was.
And
would
not
have been in
only
the
did they
late
wear
30s.
corsets, but then they had these stockings on the little things. Then they had to have a bodice. Remember?
No, I don't. But anyway, yes, you do. Good woman.
But you're the same age as me.
But I didn't wear a bodice. I
Oh,
don't
your
think-
mother.
Well, I wasn't looking at her underwear much. No, I remember a corset that she did wear. Yeah.
Yeah, but the corsets were most extraordinary, weren't they?
They were
Absolutely. I mean, great things with all these
kind of stays and
stays and
running
things, and
through
goodness
them.
knows what else. And then they all had to be,
Tightened in the middle.
yes.
Did they? I never noticed it.
They
when
did,
I-
yes. Well,
Absolutely.
in my book, I mentioned the fact is that with Kitty, who was who looked after us,
After you, yes.
we used to dress up in her corset.
Good.
And then you had the vanity bodice. So your breasts would have been up. I don't think they wore bras in those days. Probably they were a bit expensive.
Right,
So instead, you had your corset up here,
right,
and then you had your bodice,
right.
and then you had you had your vest, and then you had your bodice, and then you'd have your blouse. So altogether, you were quite
An architectural model.
Absolutely.
A bit of a superstructure. Yes.
Absolutely. So it all was that we might say a Stalinist image.
I remember I got very fat once and my mother said, you need a corset.
Oh, no.
And she went to Margot Foyne, who was a corset maker in, where? No, not Harcourt Street. Dawson Street, in Dawson Street.
Yes.
Margot Foyne.
Yeah.
And she had a corset made. Didn't make the slightest difference. I mean, I think I wore it for a while and thought this is ridiculous and stopped. Yeah, so that must have been part of the era.
It was part of the era, yes. And if you, I mean, I think that you would go and be measured for your corset and you would then wear that corset for the rest of your life.
My God, what a shocking thought.
Because I remember when I was at Hornchurch and they decided that they're going to smarten me up.
Oh, why did they decide that?
Well, I guess I wasn't smart.
Go on, yes, and?
And Marion Matthey,
Yes.
so she was delegated
To tidy you up.
to take me off to buy a corset.
Well, did she?
I know, but the whole thing is, you couldn't get a corset to fit me.
Why? You were too tiny.
No, I was plump, so I could have the corset around my hip, but because my waist was narrower, and so therefore I had this corset, and it wasn't like the old-fashioned ones. I think they were getting a bit more modern then, and they put on. But the fact is that there was a big, because it didn't get around my neck.
Your waist?
It didn't go around my waist, no.
Good Lord.
I know.
And so there...
And so the whole thing was a disaster. It was all a disaster of trying to...
And why at Hornchurch would they have been trying this to smarten you up? Why do they need to?
Well, because that, you know, what the theatre was like in those days.
What were you doing in Hornchurch?
I began as an ASM with Stuart Burge.
Like we
because
all
because
do.
remember, Hornchurch was the first municipal theatre.
Theatre. Mm-hmm.
And Stuart Burge had been with the, what's the name of the Frenchman?
Marcel Marceau.
No.
The other one.
No.
Marguerite and...
No. Very famous French director who was teaching everyone a different way of acting.
Oh, right. No, can't remember. Did you intend to be an actor at that stage? You were an ASM, I was too, which was the lowest form of life in the theatre.
And you're ASM, and then
manager.
you get parts.
Then you get some parts.
Yes.
You get a little walk on or...
Well, no, I think Stuart was very good. No, we had more than walk-ons and things.
So what did you play? Can you remember any of the things?
Oh, I can remember all of them.
Come along, tell us.
Okay, so I was in a play about racial segregation in the Deep South.
Right.
And I played a young black girl. Then I shocked all of them when I was in Othello.
As who?
I was a lady in waiting there, but I blacked myself up.
Okay,
And
all
they
right.
thought that is absolutely dreadful.
What a good idea, though.
I know it was.
I wouldn't. I thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying the conservatism at that time, in particular with Tom Chatto, who kind of ruled the roost.
Oh.
So then another one I was in Noel Coward. Was with Private Lives.
Private Lives. Good.
And
woman.
I was.
What were you?
And I was the concierge. And naturally enough went to Paris to study concierges.
Yes.
And I found they were extremely interesting because they would sit there and they'd be smoking their fags and they had all old clothes and whatever have you, and they'd have a bit of hair out of them, whatever have you. So that shocked them. That shocked Tom Chatto.
Well, you began early then to be weird as far as the theatre was concerned.
I had a very instinctive attitude to a Brechtian way of acting.
Yes.
So another one we were in was Anastasia.
Did you play Anastasia?
No.
No.
But this is where I discovered the fun of actually having these little cameo pieces. So with Anastasia, and there was another young fella, and we were these old people. Well, the joy we had of putting every bloody bit of hair coming out of his moustache, just goodness.
It's very good to have a comrade in arms, though, for these events. You don't want to be doing it all on your own, if possible. If you have a fellow who has the same attitude, it does increase the
Well,
enjoyment.
no. I had a very good mentor,
Who is that?
and that was Christopher Burgess,
Ah, right.
who had come from the Michel Saint-Denis.
Good. Oh, Michel Saint-Denis, of course. Yes, okay, good.
And so there were a couple of people in Hornchurch who had an alternative view of the theatre and were trying to change this whole West Endy thing.
And was Hornchurch regarded as a kind of forcing ground for young talent?
No, they had very established people there.
But yeah, but it wasn't in the centre of London. It was.
It would be a place that actors would be interested in going there because A, we had 2 weeks rehearsal,
Unusual.
which most of them just had 1 week rehearsal.
Yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing about Hornchurch, which I have in the book, do you remember the whole Stephen Ward scandal?
Oh, I do.
That's
Yes.
it. So Stuart had a kind of rather impish feeling about him.
Yeah.
So he decided then he was going to bring Stephen Ward's ladies to come into the theatre.
Oh.
So we had Maureen Swanson, who later became a duchess.
Yes, all right.
And this is Stephen Ward, remember, was there
I
to
do.
promote his young ladies.
Yes.
To be able to be part of the aristocracy. The other one we had was Yvonne Furneaux. Do you remember Yvonne
I
Furneaux?
do, yes.
Now, Maureen Swanson was very interesting because she, I think, was South African. And her mother was always there, making sure that Maureen was going to be absolutely perfect lady. She used to wear her little white gloves, didn't mix with any of us.
Oh.
And she got the reward in the end. Now, even though presumably the mother did not mind them going off to Stephen Ward for his soirees.
Yes, yes.
But it was really quite interesting, this thing, because I think Yvonne Furneaux, she was a bit lazy.
And at the time, did you realise the character of the people that you were among? How were you as a young actor with those people?
Well, remember, we were there all the time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you're so I would leave the house in the morning. Then we would be rehearsing the next play.
Right.
Then we had our evening performance. Then every other weekend, we would be then changing the set.
Set, yes, of course.
So really, we were totally and absolutely...
You were, so to speak, residents of Hornchurch.
Absolutely,
all of that.
absolutely.
Yeah. And were you
all
paid?
Of us, yeah,
you were paid?
Because after a bit then I became member of equity in, what was that?
Yes,
paid?
yes, the actor's equity.
£4. So it meant then is that the actors were very close then to the ones in London.
Of course.
Like all the gossip used to be about all the gays who were homosexuals in those days. Of course, they wanted to get up with John Gielgud.
Yes, yes.
And John Gielgud was the prize. And then having got off with John Gielgud, they'd come around and say, oh, his breath was so bad. I mean, they were really quite nasty about these.
Was that the old Vic? Was that the kind of London thing for people who are aspiring to be, serious, so-called
No, because
serious
by
actors?
that time, I think it was George Trevine had been
Yes, well,
part of the
that
Young
was-
Vic.
yeah.
But he then lost his job.
But he went and founded the Royal Court.
No, but
The English Stage Company.
a few years later.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was terrible, I think, what happened to George when he was ousted from the
Old Vic.
Young Vic, yes. So also you've got to remember, at that time, of course, homosexuality was a crime.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Because actually, if you may remember, it's John Gielgud, he was sent to jail for a time for picking up somebody in the, what was it?
Yes. It's strange, isn't it? Because
was
in
all
Ireland,
very-
where it was equally criminal, Meehall and Hilton ran a theatre and nobody said a word about the fact that they were both gay and that this was a theatrical event that was very important for the life of Dublin and the country as far as theatre was concerned.
No, but at London at that time, it was moving to a right wing. I mean, the same way as race, because Christopher Burgess, he was gay and he had a lover who was a black man. And we were all going around to a nightclub and the nightclub wouldn't allow us in.
how did you meet John? J.A. How did you meet John? He had a girlfriend at the time, didn't he?
The beautiful Eleanor.
The beautiful Eleanor.
Beautiful Eleanor.
And if I remember what
The
you
beautiful Eleanor, Scottish, who then ran off with a one-eyed Greek smuggler.
Oh, God, this
And
is
wouldn't
too...
have anything to do with John because she thought he really wouldn't make anything of himself. So that
Well, John at that time was a person who was an architect and was in an architect's office, if I remember from the book, from your book, Loose Theatre, wonderful book. But if I may interrupt you for a moment now, I want to say what's in the book. And that is, he was a man who wore tweed suits and wool next to the skin and proper underwear, and his mother washed his underwear and looked after him.
Yes.
And he had one great inconvenience was that he was still a virgin.
Yes.
And you released him by offering to relieve him of this inconvenience.
I negotiated.
And you did.
Absolutely, yes. I'm one of the most successful hookers that are around.
And is there a bush somewhere in a park in London which is named for both of you as the place where you did relieve him of his virginity?
No. Actually, I relieved him of his virginity in up in Hampstead.
You then became pregnant.
I didn't immediately become pregnant.
Not well in the near
I had been trying to get pregnant for years.
It hadn't worked, obviously.
It hadn't worked, except when I was on tour with a very remarkable play called Creep, Shadow, Creep.
Creep, Shadow, Creep.
Because at that time, porn films weren't allowed.
Okay, so you did one.
Well, it was only a mild kind
Well,
of...
as a 4-year-old masturbator, I mean, you were obvious choice.
I mean, absolutely. So there used to be somebody called Harry Hansen.
Yes.
From Manchester. So he would put all these plays on, in these enormous, I mean, nobody came, they were so dreadful. Absolutely. So this one was all double gags about the gas man coming along and all those double entendres and whatever have you. So I had a very good part as a prostitute, which Harry Hansen complimented me on. I was the only one who knew what the business was about. So my role as the prostitute, having examined, naturally enough, Brechtian methods, if I was on the street, it meant I was not a very posh prostitute.
Were you not? Okay.
I would have been a 5 bob for a
5 bob? Oh,
a 5 bob for a blowjob.
Really? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So I would be in my cosy little bedsit. I mean, they were really very respectable because it just was a job to do. So if I didn't have any money for the gas, I'd then nip out, put on my slippers and wander down the street.
Yes, and get the gas money.
And I really enjoyed that part.
How long did it last?
The Creep, Shadow, Creep.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what was it? Oh, we went to all the big theatres. We were playing in Manchester, and I mean, in those days, there were really big theatres.
They were proper provincial theatres, and then
Absolutely
people did the tour and went out of town and then came into town after they'd done.
And when we arrived in Guildford, then we were up against another group, and they were much posher than us.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. I remember this, I think they had a star there.
Oh.
And this young thing was saying, oh yes, be so and so. You know, it was all very, very formal while we were treated like bloody shit. Play like Creep, Shadow, Creep.
Creep, Shadow, Creep. It's a wonderful name for a play. I must remember it. Go back to John Arden and your next question.
Oh yes, I was going back. Anyway, so we had a man of colour who was in the cast.
Right.
And one time John came to see me.
Yeah.
And he said, that man is very fertile. And I thought, okay.
That'll do, yes.
That'll do.
But it didn't work, obviously.
It did work.
Did you become pregnant?
Yes. On New Year's Eve.
Okay.
Yes.
And what happened to that pregnancy?
No, that was my first child who died.
That's right, but I thought that first child was John's.
They're all Johns.
Yes, I thought so. Okay, well,
all 8 of them are Johns.
Then stop having a wild wild eye.
Eight of them.
I remember, yeah. You buried an awful lot of sons. Yeah.
Well, not really.
Well, 8. There are 4 now, are there not?
Yeah, I know, but listen, That's what I very much resented. Then I was told to go off to the birth control clinic.
Oh my God, why?
Having so many...
Babies who were not going to live.
Well, not necessarily, but I hated the whole thing, actually.
Did you? Yeah.
And you came along and said, oh, you poor woman. I didn't feel like that at all.
No, you do write in the book about your mother-in-law, Nora, who I think...
No, her name was not Nora, it was Nancy.
Nancy, I beg your pardon. She was somebody who ruled the household with a rod of...
No, she didn't.
...stern. Well, you said to her at one point, he's not your little boy anymore, he's mine.
I know, but she didn't rule it like a...
Well, she had an attitude, though, to Irish people, did she not? Catholics.
She had an attitude. Irish, Catholic, pregnant, Jewish.
That's it. Yes.
I mean, what could be more terrible for her?
Well...
I mean, the interesting thing about John's background was she was from Lancashire.
Yes.
While the father was from Yorkshire. And her background was they were Methodists, while the Yorkshire people were Church of England.
Oh, Lord.
So she had had a lot to put up with from
them.
If anyone ruled the roost with a rod of iron, it was the old grandmother. I mean,
Oh, I see.
yes.
But Nancy and your mother didn't get on that well, did they?
Well,
Didn't your mother reappear into your life suddenly at that point?
Well, naturally enough, they wouldn't, because there had to be negotiations.
Uh-huh.
So Nancy, who really was absolutely sweet, very naive, and she said, oh, Margaretta, because she had worked in the civil equivalent of the social service during the war.
Yes.
She said, Margaretta, I know of very nice homes that you can go to.
A home?
A home for unmarried mothers.
Oh, God. But you were going to be married to John because John had decided that the solution to the problem was to get married.
No. I'm talking about negotiations. The negotiations between Nancy and my mother, me and John's father.
Okay.
So she said, and she had such a sweet voice, she said, Margaretta, there are very nice homes, and I know because I have brought many, many young girls there, and that would be very nice for you to stay.
And what was going to happen to you and the baby?
She hadn't thought that through.
Okay.
She hadn't thought that. I mean, this is the image. So can you imagine what my mother thought when Nancy said to put me into the home?
Yes, I can.
So their point of conflict came over about the washing.
The washing?
Yes.
Of what? You? The baby?
No, clothes.
Clothes? Why?
Because in Yorkshire, because it's very filthy, a coal mining area.
Yes.
Where there was a lot of dirt. I have the whole description. The wash took a whole bloody week. So first of all, it had to be soaked. Then it had to be put into the masher, wasn't it?
Yes. There was a mangle also.
No.
They had to mash it.
No, there was a posher.
Yeah, that's right.
So the sheets would be put into the poshers. That would be the next day. Then the next day would have to be rinsed. Then the mangle. Then the drying up. Then the putting of the clothes out. So my mother then, being prejudiced against people who lived in Yorkshire in little terraced houses, automatically assumed that, of course, Nancy's kitchen was full of sheets.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So this was the
exchange in the negotiations.
Exchange in the negotiations. And then Nancy would say, I know very nice Jewish people in Leeds.
I remember, yes. Yes, I know. But your mother was not a very nice Jewish person from Leeds. She was of a higher echelon, let's say.
Her parents came from Russia, and from Russia they went to Austria. And from Austria then, because my grandfather, under the Tsar, Jews had to enroll in the army.
Right.
And so my father did not want to enroll in the army. So he fled. So he fled, and by this time he must have been married to my grandmother. So they fled to Austria, from Austria to London. But then in London, in 1905, there was the Nationality Act. They were going to root out all the people who weren't. So they lived down in the East End, and my grandfather, to earn a living, he rolled his own cigarettes and would go out and sell them. And the grandmother, I think she would make some sweets or buns or something for the Sabbath.
Right.
So that's how they earned their money.
Okay.
But I mean, what was very interesting is he would not allow my grandmother to talk Yiddish. So he was determined that the children should
be English.
Assimilate into the English thing.
Right.
So what he did is he learned Latin and spoke to the children in Latin. But I think it's very interesting is it 1905 and that Naturalization Act.
Yeah.
Because it meant then is that the children had to hide their origins.
Yes.
I mean, it's very much like what's happening today.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, I think, has an enormous effect on a family where when you haven't, on the one hand, there's a secret and you can't tell anyone about really where you come from.
There's a very interesting book that I remember reading when I was studying in Belfast, and it was called Street Corner Society, and it's about the East End and about the different families and their origins and where they came from, many from Russia, many from Middle Europe,
Yes.
and how they had to find a way and bond and find a way of life and a means of sustaining life, that is to say, you know, either a trade or some kind of profession. How many children were there in that family of your grandfather's, your mother, and how many of hers siblings?
I think there was about 5.
5, okay.
Because I know a brother Arthur died at a football match.
At a football match? Good Lord.
But then one of her brothers, remember, was assassinated. Because also during this time was the beginning of the concept of Israel having its own land.
Right. That was after it was beginning during the Second World War.
No.
It was earlier than that.
This is earlier. This is about the beginning of the 19th century.
Okay.
Because remember Herzog?
Yes. And
So he came to the East End to talk. And then my eldest uncle I think they decided then that he was to have the responsibility of going to Israel.
Right.
And be part of the liberation struggle.
Okay.
So he had become a professor, actually, and was in the Hebrew University there.
So,
and he was assassinated then during one of the skirmishes between the Arabs and the Jews.
And the Jewish people. Right. It is a tremendous heritage to have, and a sense of history must be very strongly present in you through that family background. You know, we've talked about England and Hornchurch and London and all of that, but it's your father's side of the family, which is fascinating. He was a civil servant in the Irish Free State.
Yes.
And how did he and your mother meet?
School of Economics. Because you've got to remember that when the Brits left, they had to train up their civil servants, so they went off to the School of Economics. I mean, you know, it's like what's happened now. When you read in the paper about all these people, they've either been to School of Economics or on the various things. So that's where they met.
Because she wasn't studying economics, was she, your mother?
Yeah.
She was, okay. And so he came back to Ireland and she came with him, but she didn't fancy staying long term.
No,
Yeah.
they stayed in London.
Right.
Because he was part of the Department of External Affairs. There wasn't Foreign Affairs in those days, the Department of External Affairs.
I remember.
So that's where he was working.
Okay. But was he sent back to Ireland?
Yep.
Yes. And how many of you then, you went to school in Dublin, in and around Dublin, didn't you? And your sisters did as well. And you lived in different parts of Dublin.
Yeah, but well, they never owned a house.
No, but that, I mean, so what?
Which in those days, you actually meant to buy a house and stay there.
Oh, well, I see. But your father would have been of a more, let's say, settled.
No.
No, he was not. Well, describe him a little then.
Well, he was taken up by Louis Bennett.
Yes, who was the great trade unionist woman.
Exactly,
Yes.
and that whole liberal wing with Liam O'Flaherty, Peadar O'Donnell.
Okay, left
were
wing.
all in
Yes.
the IRA
Yeah.
at that time.
Okay, right.
So then he belonged to that progressive.
Stream.
Yes.
Post-executions and all of that, there wasn't much of that left, though, unfortunately. There was the Peadars, O'Donnell's all right.
Yeah, I know, but that all kind of faded away, really, with the theocratic Irish state.
Post-Connolly state.
At that
Yeah.
time,
Yes.
you know. So when he, I mean, it's interesting, which I think I have it in there. Oh no, that's in my other book, about the letters that my father wrote when he was in Mountjoy.
Yes.
Now that's an extraordinary coincidence. So
Yeah.
he was in Mountjoy
Yeah.
about 90 years before me.
Exactly, there you
They were
are.
both in the same
It was meant to be, as they say.
And so the letters then that he was writing to his mother, which I thought were absolutely sweet. So he was obviously arrested when he was on his bicycle.
Was he running some kind of a messages system for the IRA? Or
Well, he was in the Dublin Brigade.
Brigade
with,
of the Citizens' Army? Or-
yeah, so he was part of the Dublin Brigade who bombed the Custom House.
All right, so how long did he spend in Mountjoy?
He was only there for 6 months because I think when he was there, an amnesty kind of broke out. But what I didn't realise was the ferocity of the FITZGERALD government,
The first Free State government.
the Free State government.
Yes,
So they raided my grandmother's house
right.
and they found a pistol holder.
A holster for a pistol. Yeah.
So that anyone who'd anything to do were going to be shot.
Yes.
Well, fortunately, because of the COVID-19 disease, we haven't had the recriminations over the Civil War, which were absolutely ferocious.
I know they were shocking days, and there were
Absolutely.
people murdering their next of kin,
Absolutely.
and their best
I know.
friends.
And also that when you think about what was happening in Mountjoy, so my father, I mean, typical prisoner to his mother. Could you send me in a clean pair of underpants?
Of course.
And also, could you send me the books? So the books he was reading were all economic books and all kinds of things. I mean, so obviously the governor really wasn't too bad at all.
And when he came out of jail and began his life out of, in the New Ireland, so to speak.
Well, in New Ireland, then he was in the
he
civil
then
service.
became a member of the state, so to speak, apparatus, and was in the Department of External Affairs. Met your mother, came back to Ireland, and was in Ireland then for quite a while when you were being in school, was he not?
No.
He wasn't. Did he? Well, why were you in school in Ireland then all the time?
He kept on coming back and forward.
I see.
Because he was, I mean, because I remember certainly when we were in Lochshinny, my father coming back and telling us about the trade talks at that time between the Irish government and Germany. Because I think Ireland was, because if you may remember, the embargo that the British had on Irish trade, do you remember?
The ports, yeah, I do.
So therefore Ireland was trying to get out of that then and was trying to negotiate with other countries. So he was negotiating and going off to Germany and finding out all these kind of things.
Was that before the Second World War or
Before
during?
Second World War.
And where were you during the Second World War? Because you would have just been born then, 5 years old at the beginning of the war.
No, well, we were wandering around the place, either in Lochshinny, whatever.
Yes.
So what happened is that then it was decided that my father then would be permanently in the Department of External Affairs in London. So we all went off there. And this is just about 1937 during the Phoney War. And my mother's parents and older brothers and sisters were extremely worried about what was to happen to us.
Exactly.
And so they said to my mother to bring us back to Ireland where my father stayed. So he then stayed in London all during the war.
Okay. Good Lord.
And then my mother, she also went to do war work during the war. She actually was, because she was I think she was a biochemist, I think, at this time. So she helped to invent plastic.
God bless her.
Because I remember coming on holidays and she told this Tupperware.
The curse of the...
Right. And they made these wonderful, and all this wonderful material that was made for the parachutes, do you remember?
I do, yes.
Which had maps on them and everything.
Yes, exactly.
You know.
And during the war, you were aged, what, 5 to 10 or 11?
Well, the war completely disrupted us because of De Valera and the fear that he would give up the Jews, even though we were Irish Catholics. So my mother then decided the safest place for us was to be in a convent.
Good. Yeah, okay.
So off we went to Dominicans.
Oh, Dominicans. I thought you went to Loretto's in...
No.
That was later. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about peripatetic.
Yeah.
I think weird includes peripatetic. It must do. So
No,
listen, okay.
not really, because also actually, do you remember Michael Randall? He was at school with me.
Good Lord.
So Dominicans is that they took the kind of refugees from England then.
So you left Ireland at what age and went back to England and began your life in the theatre? What prompted that? Did you not
I was
want
thrown out of the country.
You were thrown out of the country by whom?
My sisters.
Why?
My behaviour was causing shame to their...
Really? To their notions of propriety or what?
Absolutely, yes.
And what was so strange about your behaviour to them?
It all happened in Martello Terrace in Bray.
Right.
Which actually is where Mary Cockney used to live.
Yeah.
And there was a party.
Yes.
And I suppose you see, I was a disturbed teenager.
Like a lot of teenagers.
And I decided to burn myself. I had a candle and I tried to...
Very painful.
It's when you're in a very disturbed state, you don't feel physical pain.
That's true, I suppose, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then everyone at the party got all upset, and then these African students decided that they were going to cure me and beat me up and tried to throw me into the sea and goodness knows what else.
To put out the fire?
Well, the whole look, you know
Yes.
what it's like when
All right,
look,
yes.
you have a disturbed teenager.
Yeah. Okay, and why were your sisters not disturbed? Or why did they not think of themselves as disturbed and want to get rid of you, therefore?
Well, because gossip, the shame. Here we have it all here in our little thing. Shame is
Yes.
the thing.
No, I know Garrett O'Connor, who was married to Fionnuala Flanagan.
Oh, yes.
He was a psychiatrist and he believed that the reason for alcoholism among the Irish had to be shame. And that
Exactly,
it came
yes.
from the time of the famine, and it came from the sense of shame.
Exactly, yes.
It came from people who survived. You know, and I think it's probably very sensible theory.
You know, Dublin was a small place then. And it had been a bit of a scandal about
Yes.
what happened. Then all... You know.
Do you want to sit up for a moment? And I want to ask you a little about coming back.
Can we have a break to have a smoke?
Of course you can.
Go ahead. Do you want me to roll you on, or do you want to sit over there? I'll bring them over. Hold on. Hang on. You have a whole rake of them here, darling. Do you want to roll one, or do you want a new one? No, here, see what you want to do.
But you've got to remember, Lelia, what Dublin was like in those days for a young person.
I do remember. Where was I?
Bloody awful. People like
I was riding around on a bicycle.
Tony Cronin and Paddy Kavanagh and whatever.
Don't talk about that now, because it's very rich, good stuff to talk about on film, I think.
Keep going when you're rolling.
Yes, why don't you?
How young girls were treated, absolutely dreadful. You were really absolutely nothing.
Well, that is absolutely true. I remember you're telling a story about your mother, which she had never told you until her 80th birthday. And that was how she was really humiliated during a conference about women and the rights of women. And she actually came along in order to speak about how children, if women were to go out to work, how there was going to have to be a state support system for creches and care for small children. Right. And apparently she was laughed out of it. And Louis Bennett did nothing to support her, which absolutely astonished me.
She was set up.
Do you think so? But why? Why was she set up?
Because she was a stranger, because she didn't belong to them. So therefore they decided they would fly the kite, see how it went, and when it didn't go well, then my poor mother was the one who was the victim of this. Now, you know this happens all the time, Lee.
Well, it does, yeah. It's shocking, though. I mean, it was really shocking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So they themselves don't have the courage to put something forward.
So they get somebody to do it.
So they get somebody to do it, and they get somebody who they feel it does not matter if that person is pillarised. But my mother was very good, because when she qualified, the first thing she wanted to do was set up a clinic in Kilmechanic.
Good.
And she went to the priest and no.
Why not? It was like the mother and child scheme. How dare you have anything to do?
Exactly, the mother and child scheme. I mean, one of the reasons why my mother had all of us in England, I mean, because I remember my younger sister was...
Why she went to England to have all of you, yes. Was that
and that's to do with the fact is that the baby came first with the lives of the mother. My mother just...
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
I mean, it was really... Yes. I mean, she really is very heroic, my mother.
Yes. Now, there you are.
So, do you wonder what my guilt is?
What's your guilt? I didn't think you had any.
We have. If I'm to be a weirdo, I'm a weirdo because of my guilt.
Are you guilty? What are you guilty about? Oh, to hell with all of that.
No.
Fellow.
Very, very interesting.
No, I'm not saying it isn't interesting, but it's not the whole of life. It's your idea for today. That's what it is. And it's your discussion.
I found it yesterday, and it's absolutely fascinating.
And you thought, I'm going to discuss this tomorrow, no matter what.
I just want to tell you my guilt.
Go ahead.
Right. So when we were put into the convent, of course we were told that if our parents did not go to Mass and do the things, they would burn in hell.
Yes.
So the idea then of my mother burning in hell, and we absolutely tormented her that she should become a Catholic.
God.
We were proper little zealots. Proper little zealots we were.
Dear God.
And I remember how we went on and on and on and on and on and on. And so in the end, I think my mother burst into tears and she says, oh, I'll be a Catholic. Fortunately, she didn't. But you have no idea of the pressure at that time.
Was that in the early 50s?
40s.
No, the 40s were the war.
No, 40s. If we look, war ended 40s.
The end of the 40s, okay.
Yes, it was during all this time. Because don't forget McQuaid. We have it all in the book, my deepest humiliation when they discovered my sister and I weren't baptised. You know, but I mean, the pressure, if you're very susceptible.
Well, of course, young people are susceptible, and of course, everybody felt that everybody was going to burn in the fires of hell, and these were the worst things.
Did you feel that your parents were going to burn in hell?
Never, no. I knew they weren't.
But did they go to Mass?
Yeah, they did. My father wouldn't have been a big, you know, heavy Mass-going person.
But did they go to Mass on a Sunday?
Yeah. Yeah, more or less. He'd go along because we were going along, but it just, you know, it was a thing you did. I don't believe in those days that there were as many, well, perhaps there were many believers. There were many believers, perhaps. I'm not sure about that.
Well, they all did their duty because of the shame. If they didn't go to bloody mass on Sunday and sat on the front bench and gave...
My father wouldn't have been worried about that. He was a civil servant in England. He was a British civil servant as a young man. And he came back after the treaty. And he would have had an understanding and an affection for non-conforming that, you know, might not have been usual in those days from a young man from County Clare.
What about your mother?
Certainly.
Your mother?
She would have been a Clare woman who would have been certainly a free thinker.
But did she go to mass?
She would have, yeah, of course she went to mass.
And confession?
I haven't a clue about confession. I never asked her.
But whichever way it was, that there was an order. It was an orderly timetable.
Oh, yes. Well, I suppose it was the regime. It was the culture of the time.
I know, yes. But I'm saying is that we took that culture hook, line and sinker.
Yes, of course we did.
To an extreme.
We did. And then we found out that it was bogus. And now nobody... Well, not many, but there are still some
no, it's not
believers.
bogus. No, I absolutely disagree with you there, actually.
No, I don't. I wouldn't accept that it isn't. I think most religion.
Say,
yes.
One of the biggest influences of my life, when I was at my convent, was the. God, I can't remember her name now. Who's the famous nun who became part of the Four?
What era are you speaking of?
I'm talking about St. Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, yes. Hildegard von Bingen. There was Hildegard von Bingen.
No, who's the woman?
There was St. Clare.
No. How is the name? Have a look it up in the book. And she then became a diplomat.
They all were brilliant diplomats, those women. They had to be.
I know.
I mean, like nowadays.
But in particular, this one.
Oh, God,
St. Catherine of Siena.
Catherine of Siena. That'll do.
Exactly. So St. Catherine of Siena was my role model.
Ah, and is she still your role model? Dear God, what happened? Oh, yeah.
No, I find them all quite fascinating.
I think they were marvellous women. I think Bridget was an amazing character.
You know, if you take St. Dominic and Scholastica, who ran away from home and set up their own monasteries and everything. So within the Catholic Church, there always was this...
I think within all religions, and I don't believe just in the Catholic Church either, but I do think that one of the reasons that religion in Ireland became so oppressive, really, was because they decided that it was all about rules. It wasn't about anything other than rules. And the will. They elevated the will to a huge height.
Don't forget, this all came from Adrian, the Pope, the British Pope, who allowed Henry II with the papal bull to come over to our... Yes, but we forget about this.
No, I don't forget about it. But in what sense do you mean, what difference does it make that the Catholic monasteries, who were all fairly corrupt anyway, I'm quite sure,
yes,
in Henry VIII's time, were stopped and sanctioned and closed, and people were burnt and hanged and executed and everything else. I mean, how did this lead to our having somebody like John Charles McQuaid as the Archbishop of Dublin? Explain that to me.
The bourgeois.
Yes.
It's once again based on class, as you know.
Well,
so actually, it always based on class. So therefore, the families that were part of the bourgeoisie is that they put their children into the church, and I mean the actual competitiveness and
but they were,
you know, and kind of who got a prime position where.
But what about true believers, people who actually did have a sense of the spirit of the world as being something other than daily life, people who had an attitude which wasn't just about the rules, but had something to do with affection and love and fondness and decency and kindness. What about them? There were
Because
those people also.
Also, you've got to remember, within the Catholic Church, which is the reason why I became such a zealot, is there is so much space for you within the Catholic Church. So you had your own saints. I mean, I had St. Catherine, and the other saint I had was St. Anthony of Padua. And you had your little statues and you had your rosaries. The whole business about the rules, I mean, that in particular was for the bourgeoisie. The pressure was on them. And once again, we have the whole business of the shame and everything of them to make sure that the rules were kept.
Okay, look.
So you can't take the Catholic Church without the class nature of Irish society at that time.
No, I don't disagree.
And the relationship of England on also keeping the Irish under. The English didn't care so long as we were under the
rule of Rome.
Under the rule of Rome or under the rule, so they couldn't keep us, so they decided then put them under the rule of Rome, which is where Henry II came in.
Henry
and the papal bull, which is still there. I mean, the papal bull is absolutely atrocious.
It doesn't matter to me at the moment, and
it matters to me.
To you. No, it doesn't matter to you.
Well, it matters to me because I discovered about the 13 grandmothers, Native Americans.
Yes.
And we went off to Oregon because they were having a big thing about it. Mm-hmm. And that certainly affected them. So they were considered practically animals. The papal bull. And the papal bull has never rescinded that. I don't understand why everyone, they should rescind that the same way as that they rescind the whole business of slavery and whatever have you. But the papal bull, it absolutely dreadful.
Is it still affecting the lives of the 13 grandmothers?
All these things affect you. I mean, it does affect you.
Yes.
Oh, incidentally, I always thought I was Norman with the name Darcy.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. Yeah.
I know, but
apparently...
apparently no.
Does that please you?
No, the Darcys are actually native Irish, which means I am affected by that bloody papal bull.
All right, well now, you don't look too put out about it, I have to say.
I'm put out about it.
Let's just go on for a moment then and come back here with John after George Devine, after the Royal Court, after the English Stage Company, and after all of the writing and the plays that began, your plays, his plays, your joint plays.
I wasn't doing any plays then.
No, but you began afterwards. I mean, there's about 25 books that you have either collaborated in or written yourself between books and plays. So really what I wanted to come on and ask you is this. You came back to Ireland because John had £600 of a dowry from an ancient aunt, I think. And therefore, it was possible to buy somewhere. And you first of all had a cottage.
I think we have to go back to
England.
No, we have to go back.
Yes.
We have to go back at the Royal Court.
Yes. It's 20 to 1. We're going to go on for how much longer?
As long as you want.
No.
The Royal Court, which was a terrible place. And one day I was up on the roof and I thought...
The Royal Court was a theatre in London which was very, very avant-garde and was run...
It wasn't avant-garde.
Well, it attempted
totally
to enable...
Of course,
everything is corrupt eventually, It attempted to give a voice to a new cadre of writers.
That had been it.
It didn't necessarily
Shall I just say, so you were the fatted calf to begin with?
Who was?
The playwright. But then if the fatted calf didn't bring in the market, you're out.
Of course.
Well, it's a horrible way to live.
It is, of course, a horrible way to live.
I know.
It's a frightful way to live.
It's cruel.
Yes.
Absolutely cruel.
Yeah. But you came from that place.
I came from that place because I was going to jump and kill myself on the top of the Royal Court Theatre, and I thought, I don't have to put up with this suffering anymore. Instead, I'm going to find my own way of doing things. And that's what happened. You have no idea what it's like.
I do.
You do. It's humiliating. I think that the theatre is one of the cruelest
Yes, the art world and the theatre world are cruel.
Very, very cruel.
Yeah, but I think
Absolutely.
an awful lot of life is quite cruel anyhow, is it not?
I don't care. This is my experience of what was happening at the Royal Court.
Yes.
Right, so on the one hand, avant-garde,
Well,
whatever have you. In the end, it was a bloody hive with bloody Neville Bond and the bloody money people who were dictating about what was happening. Because you remember Tony Richardson, who was part of it. And then, of course, they all went off to Hollywood and you know,
now listen,
reputations and whatever have you.
Just hold on for a second.
And finally becoming part of Tony Blair's Cool Britain, Cool Britannia.
All right. Now, this is going all over the place, so stop for a moment now.
No,
you're talking to me about people...
Because you don't recognise the actual pain that one was going through, the torment.
Yes. I do. I was in the Abbey Theatre, remember? If you're looking for torment, this is the real place to have it. So stop. You and Sergeant Musgrave's Dance was one of the plays in the court at that time, and it didn't make money, apparently.
It didn't make money, but nobody came to it either.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's it. So, but it afterwards gained the reputation that it deserved from the very beginning.
Hello?
Hey, Margaretta, just me.
Oh, good.
Job around the corner. Sorry, you're all right. I was just wondering you didn't get that done yet.
No, he's coming round tonight.
I'll be down there and I'll hop up, all right?
Okay, thanks.
So, John began to have a reputation as an unusual and an interesting playwright.
That was only due to Lindsay Anderson.
Well, it was due to the fact that he was that. And
We don't know whether things... Oh, listen, Lelia, we really have to get rid of all this business.
Yes.
About hype.
No, I agree.
So one person can be hyped up and then suddenly, because it's the right person to be hyped up, then everyone else...
It's all to do with bourgeois. Shame. According to you.
It's all to do with how high you are in the hierarchy, and they build you up and they can pull you down.
Doesn't matter. The fact is,
I know, but one is a human being.
Yeah, look, yes, one is.
I know.
If you swim in those waters, there are a lot of whales and sharks in that water. It's quite true.
One does not put up with it, though.
No, and you didn't. You began to do your own thing.
Absolutely.
Yes, and just talk a bit about that, about coming here, about the Ballygone being bequest, about living in Corrandulla.
Yes, because what you've got to understand, the only reason why we came to Ireland was where we were staying, and this all to do with the Committee of 100. So we were involved in Committee of 100, non-violent direct action, whatever have you. Mm-hmm. And Full Sutton was an American air base.
Okay.
And this is all to do with nuclear bombs and goodness knows what.
And Clapham and all of that era. And sitting in with the women in Clapham Common.
No, that comes much later.
I realise that, yes.
I mean, this is the Committee of 100 where, that's one good thing about the Royal Court, we all became politicised and all went marching on the Committee of 100 and there's everyone, John Osborne.
Bertrand Russell was one of the...
Yes. So you had CND, which was the pale version of campaign against nuclear weapons, and then there was the Committee of 100.
Sit quietly.
Sorry. The Committee of 100, where we took part in civil disobedience.
Yes.
So taking part in civil disobedience, John had been arrested. And actually, he hadn't really been arrested. It was Doris Lessing who says, "Come in with us," and push him into the van.
That would be Doris Lessing, yes, good woman.
Half of them had been arrested before the Committee of 100 or Big Trafalgar Square thing.
Right.
And interned.
Yes.
And nobody ever thinks about that now, do they?
No, they don't, because they have similar things going on nowadays, I suppose, and they concentrate on those.
Anyway,
okay, we were going to tell me why you came to Ireland.
A telegram came saying John had been arrested. In the meanwhile, now this is my first weirdo action.
Yes.
So we decided John should go to London for the big march. I would stay at Full Sutton, and how many children did I have then? 2 children.
3.
2 children.
2. Only 2, yeah.
2. So I decided then I would cycle along to the American base to hand in a letter to the commander, asking him to think carefully about what he was doing and was it the best approach of what he was doing. So I left the children with the neighbour, and I then, on my bike, did I have one of my children on the back of my bicycle, going through this American base, which apparently was very dangerous. They were all, I think they were all on one side of it. Right. And a couple of days later, there was a knock on the door, late at night, policeman, saying that I had committed a very, very serious offence by asking the American commander to leave.
How did he know?
Because the American commander had told the police.
Yeah.
There are these dangerous...
Woman on a bicycle.
These dangerous subversives living in Full Sutton. So it meant is that the woman then, she asked us to leave. And we didn't know where to go. So we put an ad in the New Statesman, and out of that ad came a doctor from the north of Ireland who said there was this island.
Yes.
And the island was very interesting because previously people who'd been on the island were people like David.
Travellers?
No. This is all the English liberal pacifists. David, it wasn't Garland, it was...
Never mind. You had a place on an island given
that
to you
had
by a doctor.
That had a history.
Okay.
Exactly.
Was there somewhere to live on the island?
Yeah, there was a little fishing hut.
Okay. So you and all the children and John?
Yes, and we thought, now that's a very good place to go to. A, because the children can't get run over by motor cars.
Yes.
Which was my main concern.
Was it? Yes.
So off we went there. Never had been in a boat before. Rode off with 2 dustbins full of food so the house couldn't be there.
Right.
And that's how it all started.
And there was no light in that place and there was no electricity.
No, there was nothing. There was just an island.
Exactly. But there was plenty of water.
A lot of water. A lot of water. So that's how it all began. So then when one was on the island, we then, actually, Kyo's told me about the land league that was setting up in
Oughterard, yes. Yeah.
So by this time, things were steering in Ireland.
Yes.
Civil rights.
It was the civil rights movement and all of that, and Carta-Civilta in the West.
Yes.
All of that, yeah.
Yes. So that's how we became all...
Yeah. Did the writing of the Ballygum bequest, didn't that arise from interviews that you were having with people locally about
Well, that was to do with the struggle that was taking
Yes.
place with the Commander Burgess.
Yes. And that wound up...
I mean, it was all to
fought.
do with land at that time.
Yeah. Well, Bernadette Devlin says everything is to do with land in the end.
Well, she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because at that time, so really we're moving on to Lamass, deciding to open up the country.
Yes.
And so foreigners were allowed to come in and buy up the land, and then they began to put rules, regulations, who could be on the water.
Yes. But you didn't stay there very long. You came on shore then and lived...
No. We were there for a good few
about
years.
5 years, I think you said. Did you go from
Until
there?
we lost it all in the court case.
That's right. And did you go then to Corrandulla? Were you in Corrandulla when you did Ballygum bequest?
No, that's when we came back from India.
Oh, India, yes, exactly. All right. So give me some kind of a feel for then beginning the writing of the Non-Stop Connolly show, which went on
Well,
after
the Non-Stop Connolly show was inspired by all the bloody shit that was going on in all the writers' unions.
Yes, go on. Tell me a bit more.
Well, at that time there was a dispute between the writers and the National Theatre. Mm-hmm. So the writers...
The English National Theatre.
You know, it's all a bit like what Emma was involved in trying to get the National Theatre to actually put on new plays.
Yes.
And so David Edgar then decided that only suitable people were to be on the negotiating team.
Yes. You were never a suitable person.
Absolutely not. No.
Yes. So, in effect, the writing of the Connolly show was in 6 parts and it went on. It started with the unions, actually, in Liberty Hall, did it not? It began, I mean, the first performances were there.
I know, but before we do all that, so what we have to say is, who was it? Roland... Charles Maravich.
Okay.
Decided he would like an Irish play.
Ah, right.
And so we then said we won't do this play about the eviction.
Yes.
And he said no. So really, that's how...
The idea of the Connolly show came about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then John had been to visit Eamon Smullen in jail. We, by that time, had set up the Corandella Arts and Entertainment Society.
What was it called? The
Corandella
Corandella Arts
Arts
and Entertainment Society, I remember. And you ran festivals and all sorts of
Oh,
things.
yes, I
Yes.
mean, Kilroy read his first play there.
Tom Kilroy, yes. Yes.
And David Rudkin came. You know, we had all this mixture, all the...
Proper order.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's really... It's just a continuation of what happens now.
I think what you say about doing things is great, because what you're doing is you're making a performance out of what in effect is a dissent. And the dissent is generally in the form of something which is great fun. And that does not come from your...
No,
or a bit of fun.
I wouldn't say it was dissent. I would actually say is that when the state tries to block you,
Yes.
how do you escape?
Well, you mount an action of some kind.
Yes.
Yes.
And so therefore you operate in that way where the state can't catch hold of you.
But you seem to have wound up in jail quite a lot.
I know, but
Inventiveness, let us say.
No, I'm what is known as an anthropological tourist.
You're an anthropological tourist.
Jails.
Oh, yes, I see. Oh, I see. Jails I have known. Yeah. Actually, I here have a letter which you wrote me from Limerick Jail, which is rather
God,
charming.
yes.
Because when you went to Limerick Jail at the age of 79, you wrote to us because we had been sent word that books were required.
Oh, that's
so
right, yes.
Charlie Byrne, who is one of the great people in the world,
Yeah.
we got boxes together and we sent down the books. And you wrote back because you said this was not a place that anybody could live in who was interested in anything relating to ideas or stories, and that we should send, and did send, books for the women who
Yes.
were there, who had an appalling life.
Oh, Limerick is dreadful. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not surprised that your woman is suing the government being put into Limerick. When I think about Limerick, it's a bloody hellhole. Which is
Did the
still a
arrival of the
hellhole.
books, did they find their way to the women?
I think they
because you
did.
wrote me a lovely letter at the time saying it was great to get them on.
The women in Limerick loved poetry.
Yes. But they didn't have a library.
They
There
didn't
was-
have a library.
No,
It's not fair because the men in Limerick, they have a marvellous library.
I believe so.
I mean, really, we're just living in bloody dungeons in there with no light or anything. I mean, and it's still going on, and those bloody prison visitors should do something about it. And you know what it's all about, don't you? So the prison visitors saying, oh, well, we don't want women to go to jail, and so while they discuss whether women should go to jail or not, they're leaving Limerick there instead of pulling bloody Limerick down. I mean, it's a dreadful place.
Well, is it time for us to go down then and say a few words in the street outside Limerick or somewhere else? There's a new,
No, you know...
there's a new Minister for Justice now, a woman, for the first time in a while.
Yes,
Yeah?
we're going to finish off this now.
Oh, now have we to go on to the Irish? No, I'm not going to have the Constitution of Ireland read to me. Thanks a million. You're
We're
very
not doing
kind.
that. What
What are
we're
you going to do
talking
now?
about, let's have one of the envelopes.
All right then. Oh, God. You can ask me the question, I'll ask you. What is...
Mad, bad and dangerous. Now I'm saying
Are you
is that
that?
the only one who's mad, bad and dangerous is the two women attorney generals who put me into jail.
Who are they?
Frances Fitzgerald, who then has the nerve,
Oh, she wasn't the Attorney General, she was the Minister.
and the other one then, Mary Thingamabobs, who you introduced me to.
Who? Mary who?
She was the Attorney General. She came from Galway. You introduced me to her. She was in Galway at one time.
I never introduced her to you.
And it
Sure. I
was-
never knew the blessed woman. God
Yes,
bless
you
her.
did. She was called Mary.
Mary what?
I don't know.
God bless her. Anyway, go on.
Anyway,
yes.
so now, these are not my words, but the Cancola, how did he describe all the great and the good, collective crass stupidity or arrogant delusion, or both? Now, I would say is that people like Frances Fitzgerald and Mary Thing and these people, they are the mad, bad and dangerous because they know what's in the Constitution, they know what's been happening at Shannon, and they turn a blind eye.
All right.
I just wanted to tell you a little story. I was flying into Shannon and I looked out the window, and what did I see? I saw our noble army surrounding an American plane. So I was out getting off the plane. I said to the air hostess, I said, why are these soldiers protecting an American plane? And she said, I can't see anything. I said, excuse me, could you just look at what I'm looking at? And she turned her head away. She says, I can't see anything.
Good Lord.
So then, when I was going through the customs, I said, excuse me, why are Irish soldiers protecting an American plane? Oh, I can't see anything. Now, this whole business of I can't see anything, this is very much tied up with the whole way is that the government, with its stupidity or arrogant delusion, or both, and this is what we're faced with, which is what's happening at Shannon. They will not look at what is happening. Like Bertie Ahern said, we can't look at the planes because it will be like asking Tony Blair to look into his handbag.
The interesting thing about that was, during that time, David Andrews, who was a member of Fianna Fáil, and that was Bertie's party.
Yes.
You see, the argument against doing anything about Shannon has to do with our eternal relationship with America and the fact that, you know, we and they see eye to eye on many things because many of the Irish live there.
Now, the United Nations, they put forward a resolution saying that during the time of the COVID-19, all wars should cease. Trump, of course, doesn't go along with that. Now, what are we going to do with Ireland now on the Security Council seat, where they spend millions promoting themselves as this wonderful, wonderful, friendly Ireland with affirms its devotion to the ideal of peace-friendly cooperation founded on international justice and morality, affirms its to the principles of the Pacific settlement of international disputes. So what are our jolly ministers going to be doing, sitting in the United Nations and saying that we are a peaceful, loving country while we have the planes going through Shannon?
It's a good question.
It's a good question.
Well,
and
are you going to have it answered?
And we have a woman who is the UN ambassador there, and we have to do something about it. So if the United Nations tells us that we have to stop war,
Do you think we're going to do it?
well, we could certainly have a go at stopping Shannon, couldn't we?
We absolutely.
I mean, if the United Nations tells us to do something.
Yeah, no. For you've been a great warrior, and we've all fallen in behind you. No, stop. Listen, stop. Just stop for a moment. I believe that you have been a great warrior who has actually poked fun at the stupid hierarchies that exist within this country and the sadness.
The crass stupidity.
Yes. Well, you know, it's not just the government that is stupid. We're all stupid. Only it's more visible when there are people who are running the country. Or
Crass
more so.
stupidity
Anyway, stop.
arrogant delusion.
I've got you. Yes, we understand that, and that had to do with these golfers who were silly people. But most of them have said it was a stupid thing to do, and I don't think there's.
They only
there's
said
any
that
other...
when the press found them out.
They did. But
anyone can say you're stupid
changed.
once the press comes along and says that you're doing something.
Yes, but you know, come on, this is an argument that really isn't worth having. The fact of the matter is they did a stupid thing, they were found out, and hopefully other people who do stupid things in their position will continue to be found out. I don't know if this is like...
Oh, they had written out the regulations.
Hold on. Yes, of course. Yes, I know. Here's the question for you. In the end of all, there are so many things going on which are corrupt, lies, misfortunes that are wreaked upon people by those who hate them. There's an interesting line it's a famine memorial.
In your bourgeois socialism speech, are you?
Shut up, you. No, there's a very interesting thing. It's part of a letter that was written by one of the people who opposed the landlords during the famine. And he said, "It is an established law of nature to hate those whom we oppress." And I think that this is a universal, indeed, established law of nature. And sadly, you know, one has to keep on saying no to that. One has to keep, and you have continued always to say
But when
no
we have our
to it,
president,
because you have
when
freedom.
we have our president who also has an eye, he does nothing about it. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. If we could just win one little thing.
Is that the one? May I just ask you?
And keep
Okay.
our little patch clean. What an example to the world that would be.
Yeah, well, indeed.
And it's not a difficult thing to do.
No. Let me just ask you this. Is that the biggest of all the campaigns that you have conducted in your own mind? Is that the most important?
No,
It isn't the most important.
absolutely not. No.
What was more important?
What is more important? I think the most important thing is when I masturbated.
Okay. That's
When
a
I had
long
the
time
courage.
ago.
Exactly, but that was a very, very...
It wasn't a knowing thing on your part. It was just a piece of enjoyment that you were sharing. So what was wrong?
But I found out about it when I was there.
No, you
with
found
the
out
teacher.
it was frowned on. Okay, well,
I mean, that was the ultimate in a woman trying to take control and enjoy her own body. I might say masturbation now is going to be people are going to openly talk about it.
they have been regularly. Apparently,
No.
It's been on the
No, it's for women.
radio.
It's for women. It's been all about men wanking themselves up, but women rarely ever talk about it.
I see. Is that more important than stopping war, going through Shannon?
I think it's part of the whole thing. I think it's
Yes, no,
very much
obviously,
integrated into the whole thing.
Of all of the things, that you've been involved in, including...
Okay,
Clapham.
I'll tell you everything I won on apartheid,
Yes.
Greenham, the abortion, censorship, all these kind of things. It's all, we are now moving into progressive society, not because of what I did, but because I was part of it.
No. You were one of the people who created change which was necessary. And it was...
One is on the progressive flow. It's like a river.
I don't believe in progress. I don't believe in it at all. What makes you believe in progress?
Well, I think that now that women have control of their own bodies.
Right.
The time now is that women began to also control the kind of life that we live in relation to war. As the great Louis Bennett said, which I put up on which I have read before for you, actually, haven't I?
Yes.
War is necessarily bound up with the destruction of feminism. Feminism is necessarily bound up with the abolition of war. Every country must face the fact militarism is now the most dangerous foe of women's suffrage. Women should never have abandoned their struggle for justice, war or no war. And in many ways, as women, is that we have abandoned that for, you might say, the lifestyle.
Have we?
Yes. There is not a big anti-war feminist movement in this country.
I mean, we're discussing this week the whole question of a shared island and whether that's going to become more possible. But in the event...
We're talking about our foreign relationships. Now, funnily enough, that's not discussed at all in the debate about what's happening for United Ireland.
Well, it hasn't been yet.
Unless as women, is that we really get going, United Ireland is really going to be, yes, we might have a National Health Service and everything, but what is our relationship to the bigger, wider picture on militarism? I mean, the fact is that we make arms.
Yes, I know that.
It's like a cancer that's in through every bloody university. We
took part in a 30-year war in this country up until 20 years ago. And we did that. And we, and there is
we
within...
Did what?
We took part in a 30 years war.
But the war... Yes, but this is the violation of something.
It was a violation of reason. It was a violation
of violation
of
reason. 1916.
Yes. That is true. I agree with that.
And nobody,
hold on.
Nobody talks about it.
Well, you do now.
Well, I'm the only one who talks about it.
Do you want to say more about it? What else do you want to say about it?
Well, what I want to say, it's time that actually, as women, we took a stand hardly anyone uses Shannon now. Ryanair is not going to have the thing. The time now is just to say, excuse me, we want our airport back. We don't want it used as a warport.
Well, that is really then the main, in your view, energetic activism that has to continue and become more important, particularly during our life as a member of the Security Council. Is that true?
Absolutely.
I think it's crucial.
And it begins on January, and I think we have a good playing field.
Yes.
To actually...
Yes.
We have our comrades in America who are on trial in Ireland.
Yeah.
If they can help us and the whole of the anti-war movement in America, who get up and begin to call out the hypocrisy or the crass stupidity or the arrogant, whatever you call it, the arrogant elitism.
Yes, I understand.
Right, of our government to be able to stand to the world and say we are a peace-loving country.
Do you think that if one could, in fact, so to speak, invade the mindset of the politicians and diplomats in Ireland who are going to be working in the United Nations on the strategic, whatever they call it, the Security Council, that would be something worth doing as much as, you know, all of the evidence of marching in the streets has done. Is there, in fact, a cleverer way than marching in the streets that we could adopt?
Oh, absolutely agree with you.
I absolutely want to say.
I actually think at the United Nations to actually embarrass is going to be Simon Coveney, isn't it? Who'll be there?
It'll certainly be Simon Coveney, yeah. It will. Right. It'll be one of the people.
We embarrass them there, and also we embarrass them at Shannon.
We embarrass ourselves if we don't do something about it. That's the fact of the matter, I suppose.
Right, yeah.
So, in effect, we are talking more about this as the now pressing work that needs to be undertaken.
I think so.
Yes, okay.
I think so. As Louise is about the...
Yes, no, I agree with her sayings about war. Listen, there are questions here. Do you want us to deal with them? Are you going to be able to get anything out of this?
Yeah, loads.
No, you're going to have an awful job of editing. I really feel for you. I really do. And it's all your bloody fault because you're going around in fucking circles.
I just want to tell you that I'm absolutely, totally against this idea because Finn goes bonkers with me.
He's right.
No, he's not right. Because I think it's more important for me to have I am more concerned with our relationship than ever any bloody editor who suddenly decided to make this into a manageable thing.
Yes.
Because I think that what our dear comrades and women have got to learn to is actually having a bit of patience and become bored. Now, I find that when I'm bored...
all kinds of good ideas emerge.
And certainly I know with John's plays, there comes a time when you're totally riveted with boredom, the same with Arnold Wesker. But out of that pain of boredom, then suddenly you actually wake up.
Good. I hope that's true. I think it probably is true too. Do you have the pain of boredom often?
Yes.
You don't. You're not a bored person. Do you get bored? Do you get bored?
I certainly get bored. I remember going to see the workhouse donkey at a rehearsal. Oh, God! I thought, no.
What play have you ever seen that you really would love to continue to keep seeing?
I don't go to the theatre.
Come along. You make theatre.
I make theatre, but I don't go to the theatre.
Okay, are you mad was the question. Then
I'm a weirdo.
You are? Okay, well that settles that.
They're mad, I'm not.
You're a weirdo. Mm-hmm. You had a question over there that you decided to ignore.
What is courage?
You read the front part of it. What was it all about? What was that? No, what does it say there?
It says, what is courage?
What is courage? Oh, I haven't a clue.
No, it's actually...
getting on with it.
Getting on with it.
Yeah. I think getting on with it is what is that. Okay, here's the last question now. And we haven't really, what does the phrase difficult woman mean to you?
No. We are not difficult. Truth to power, that's what we do. The others, they have power to destroy truth. So if anyone is difficult, they are. And to end the quote about the crass stupidity.
Anything else you'd like to say about the crass stupidity?
Or arrogant delusion. That is what they are.
Arrogant and delusionary.
Arrogant delusion.
Well, yes.
Arrogant delusion.
Do you think
or both. So
Okay.
they are a combination of crass stupidity and arrogant delusion.
Do you think that life is made up simply then of
And we
that
are the weirdos.
others? No, we're definitely the weirdos. But the question really is, in theatre, as in all life, things change all the time. So people who are crass and delusional at one moment have the right to become not crass and not delusional at another moment. So, one has to have a bit of mercy for the life we lead. What do you have mercy for? Who do you have mercy for?
Who I have mercy for is the villages when the planes go through Shannon and people are sitting down enjoying themselves at wedding and whatever have you, and suddenly they're bombed. The person who puts the bomb doesn't even know who they are, and we don't even know who they are. And so we destroy their lives, we destroy everything. And then, on top of it all, we then have mercy for them when they come here as refugees or asylum seekers, and we put them into direct provision, and we have mercy for them. We should have mercy for them. We shouldn't allow the planes to go and destroy them. If the planes didn't destroy them and the wars weren't there and everything is wrecked, mercy, no.
I think that endeth the lesson.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anyway, I'll just read it.
Oh, don't stop reading another bit of that fucking...
Battery left, she's going to lose the battery.
Here, Anna, I'm going to read a bit now.
Anyway.
One night in the autumn of 1956, I was scurrying along Charing Cross Road in the pouring rain after rehearsal. I think that's what we need to do.
Bourgeois socialism.
Bourgeois socialism.
To this section belongs
I have nothing to say about bourgeois socialism.
Philanthropists, humanitarians.
My eyes behind the
improvement of
spectacles were
condition of the
dripping
working
off his
class,
hat.
organisers of charity, members of
Back
Society
from.
for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
There was a
temperance
negotiation.
Hole and corner reformers of every imaginable kind. This form of socialism has been worked out into complete...
Listen, I want to read a bit about John.
No.
Her first and only husband.
Weirdos,
He wore, listen now for a moment. No, listen.
And comfort is no longer mistaken for culture, and beauty becomes a need again. We are the ones who will not stay quiet.